Overall, a solid weekend of racing here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. A surprise winner, but maybe not to everyone. And we're also going to talk about the Brickyard 400, or the NASCAR race, I guess we should say, at the Brickyard. Road course versus oval. I've got a ton of thoughts about that. Let's get into it. So for all intents and purposes, we went into this weekend essentially expecting that this was going to be the last IndyCar NASCAR road course doubleheader here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the foreseeable future. The IndyCar race, obviously, yesterday, I thought it was probably the best road course race we've seen in the dry for IndyCars, and I would agree that that the same was for NASCAR. A very solid race. I would describe it as very old school. The fact that NASCAR has eliminated the stages from the road course races is going to be and I should say the stage cautions. When I say stages, I think a lot of people misinterpret that I'm talking about the points or awarding points. In fact, I think awarding points mid-race is not a bad thing to do. In fact, IMSA does it. IMSA is a NASCAR-owned series, and I really don't think that's a bad way of doing things. In fact, I would encourage NASCAR to continue to award points midway through the race because it encourages teams to take off strategies to try to be leading at certain laps. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. I think the big issue is the caution. And, the debate is going to be, whether or not today's race was exciting enough or, had enough action or whatever. And the way I look at it, and again, I have a very kind friend who had a B Penthouse ticket and said, "David, would you like to sit up there with me?" And I said, "I absolutely would like to sit up there with you." I'm a person who, if I'm going to watch a race on TV, I would rather stay at home, right? I would rather watch and observe the race with my own eyes and then relay that information to you guys. And that's exactly what I'm able to do with this race. I don't know what TV did or didn't show, but throughout the race, the strategies, the battles, the comers and goers in this race, I thought meant for very exciting and entertaining and engaging 85 laps. Now, was it, balls to the wall action 24/7? Of course not. I don't think you can ever expect races the length of NASCAR races as long as they are. And apparently this is the shortest NASCAR race of the season. This is probably the shortest time length NASCAR race that has probably happened in the post stage racing era. One caution flag that was really, frankly, preventable if Joey Logano just doesn't drive across the curb and clean out Justin Haley. Outside of that, it would have been a completely clean, perhaps even caution-free race, which is hard to believe. But when you have races of this length, and again, maybe this comes from my background being an endurance racing fan as well as enjoying NASCAR stock car racing, I think that I can watch a race that's 2.5 hours, caution-free, with battles throughout the field and a surprise winner, or at least a winner that's different, and I can say that was really exciting. Because even if there was a lull in the action at the front, I mean, let's be honest, I think the reason that this race was quote-unquote boring isn't because they didn't throw stage cautions, okay? I think it's because the Trackhouse pit crew screwed up the race of the second fastest car, which was Daniel Suarez today. Had that not happened, I think we would have had an extremely entertaining battle to the end with Daniel Suarez and Michael McDowell. But it didn't happen. And, sometimes you can't have cake for every meal, okay? This was a nice, healthy, palate-cleansing salad. And as it goes, this was an extremely delicious salad as far as I'm concerned. It was a great race. Was it totally what we've come to expect here at the Indy Road Course with all the crashes and red flags and silly moments? No. But am I angry about how this race went down or how this race played out? No. I left a NASCAR race feeling like I'd seen a motor race, and I feel like that is exactly what I wanted to have with this race. And that kind of makes it difficult, as we're going to get into a topic later on in this video talking about road course versus oval. Is the oval going to produce a show that was as good as this one? I think that's going to be a debate that's going to be really important to have. And then, of course, the other question will be, even if the race maybe isn't as entertaining, is it as prestigious? There's one person who is, or that this race is extremely prestigious for, is Michael McDowell. It's amazing how this usually tends to work out, at least especially in the NASCAR circles. It seems like a lot of drivers that win at Daytona, no matter what the circumstances, tend to come here to Indianapolis and also win. And I get it. It's the road course still. But Michael McDowell's 2 NASCAR Cup Series wins are at Daytona and Indianapolis, and I think that's just delightful, wonderful, fun. A driver who raced Indy cars but never raced at the Indianapolis 500. He raced Champ Car in 2005, actually replaced Ryan Hunter-Reay at the then Rocket Sports team for Paul Gentilozzi. That we could get off on all in the weeds about that lawsuit. You talk about the Alex Palou drama. There was quite a bit of drama at the time between Ryan Hunter-Reay and Paul Gentilozzi, but yeah, I think that Michael McDowell winning this race is a lot of fun. In fact, it's kind of funny, Kyle pointed this out to me, that the battle for the win was between 3 drivers who needed a win to get in the playoffs. It was Michael McDowell, Chase Elliott, and Daniel Suarez. It's just funny how that ends up working out. 4th place was, of course, Tyler Reddick, who won this race in such spectacular fashion last year. So it's just kind of interesting to see that the desperate times are calling for desperate measures, and teams are stepping up that need to here in the NASCAR Cup Series. The International Stars was another huge topic going into this race, and unfortunately they were kind of disappointing. Outside of Shane Van Gisbergen, who scored another top 10 finish, unfortunately doesn't get to keep his 100% win rate. Now it's at 50% for his NASCAR Cup Series starts, but Shane was extremely impressive. I thought the move he put on Kyle Larson was absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, you think about Kyle Larson, and what a talented driver he is. He won the Knoxville Nationals literally last night. I mean, this is one of the greatest drivers in the world. And another greatest driver in the world, as far as I'm concerned, Shane Van Gisbergen, put on a clinic and passed him. And, I think Shane was having some issues. I know the pit crew for Trackhouse, for whatever reason, was just poopy-doo-doo today, both for Daniel Suarez and for Shane Van Gisbergen. So that kind of cost them the race for sure. The other international star, Brody Kostecki from the Supercars Championship, was fairly anonymous. Unfortunately, his crash in qualifying certainly robbed him of the ability to have a good day. And then everyone else went to war with Ricky Stenhouse, or perhaps Ricky Stenhouse went to war with them because he ran into Jenson Button. Jenson Button actually got to pay him back. And then Kamui Kobayashi just got completely run over by Ricky, which was ridiculous. Ricky-diculous, maybe. I don't know what Ricky Stenhouse was doing. The Golden Bowling Ball Award definitely goes split between Ricky Stenhouse and Joey Logano. But at least I'll give Logano credit. He was a very courteous lap car. I think he was kind of paying a lot of things forward, hoping that guys later on down the line, when they're lapped and he's traffic, or when they're traffic for him, they'll show him the same courtesy, I'm sure. But the big debate, I think, is going to be, with this race almost certainly going back to the Oval in 2024 and possibly beyond, what is the future for NASCAR here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway long term? Because while I don't think this was a bad crowd this weekend, it certainly was, like, when we're talking about the IndyCar NASCAR doubleheader, I guess we'll start with first. They're 2 completely separate crowds. I think you probably had about the same amount of people here between the IndyCar race and the NASCAR race today, but they were totally different crowds. I don't think you got a whole lot of crossover. There weren't a lot of people that were here yesterday that were here today, in fact, and maybe part of this was the fact that there were storms coming. I don't want to totally discount that, but yesterday after the IndyCar race, it seemed like everybody left, and there definitely weren't as many people here for the Xfinity race yesterday as there were for IndyCar just a couple of hours before. But when we get to Cup, it's almost exactly the same here at Indianapolis. And so the question is going to be, when we talk about a potential move to the Oval, and I think most of us expect that the Oval is going to come back next year, the question that I have is, will the prestige level of that Oval track coming back make up for some of the lack of prestige for the road course itself? So when the Oval comes back next year, is it going to be a massive, classic NASCAR crowd? I just don't expect that. I think you can expect a typical Brickyard 400 crowd. Is that going to be better than the Cup Series on the road course crowd? Sure, probably. But you have to consider the fact that the crowd really doesn't matter here. The crowd isn't something that the Speedway needs or cares about here. TV money pays for this race entirely. So when you see the crowds, it doesn't really matter all that much. It's all gravy on top. It doesn't matter if the race takes place behind closed doors, for example, in 2020. The Speedway is still making money. A move to the Oval would be a move to try to get the prestige back, because as good of a race as today was, I don't think it was super prestigious for the entire field. Now, obviously, you saw the Professor Know-It-All video where I talked about what I would do to, get the Brickyard back on track. I mean, they were fairly wacky and out there suggestions, but I think that there's some merit to the idea that you don't want Indianapolis to just become another race. And I think despite the fact that the road course is really cool and we had a really good race today, it did just feel like another NASCAR Cup Series race. It felt like a NASCAR Cup Series race that was happening in 1997, which I thought was cool. But at the end of the day, it didn't have that kind of sense of urgency, I would say, like the Indy 500 has. And I think that the Brickyard in the past has had that. So the thing is that has also been suggested, including by Doug Bowles, the president of the Speedway, is that there's a possibility that maybe there'll be alternating years. They'll go on the oval one year and go on the road course another year. Doug even got up on the podium today and kind of suggested that this was the 30th running of the Verizon 200, which I would probably push back on that a little bit. I think that that you have to treat the road course race as a separate race. It is a separate event. The Brickyard 400, to me, is on hold as far as I'm concerned. It's almost like the war years in the Indy 500. The race is not happening, and the race that is currently replacing it is just that, a replacement. It's a totally different event. Now, I don't think that it's totally outside of the realm of possibility that a road course stock car race here could work. I mean, Xfinity, you could do it. They did it in 2020 where they had Xfinity on the road course and Cup on the oval. But I think the big thing for me would be with alternating years is that you wouldn't be building a single solitary event. You'd be having to build two different events. You'd be building the Brickyard 400 and the Verizon 200. And if you're going to have two events, why have them on alternating years? My opinion would be if you're going to go that far, might as well just have two Cup dates at that point. And I don't think many people want two Cup dates in Indianapolis, despite what you do or do not feel about NASCAR here on the road course. So I think the big thing for NASCAR going forward here is, and I think that was the big point in my Professor Know-It-All video, is that you have to build an event. Indianapolis has to be special, it has to be an event, and it has to have a special sense of urgency. There was a sense of urgency today, but it was mainly due to the fact that there were drivers needing to get into the NASCAR playoffs. And that works for NASCAR, and that probably is why things are going to be status quo, even if it is an oval race next year. But my opinion is that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway needs to do what's best for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and I think they should take a little bit more charge of this event, maybe introduce some special rules, do something to spice it up specifically for this event, because, I mean, again, event makes money. Let's be very clear. The event will continue to exist because it continues to make money for the Speedway. But it's sad to have a major event here and not have people hyped about it. The local media, by and large, not all of them, but by and large, the big local media names were not here. They were at a Colts preseason game in Buffalo. And I think the idea going forward would be you want the media to be as hyped for this event as they are for the Indianapolis 500. And NASCAR coming to this track is special. It marked a turning point in literally American motorsport, right? So this is an important event, an important race, and NASCAR at Indianapolis is important. So historically, so from my perspective, I think it should continue. I just think it needs to be treated with special care to make sure that it's not an afterthought or a joke or any of that. And I will say this. Going back and making a final point about the road course, I thought NASCAR handled this race extremely well. There were times that they could have thrown cautions that they did not. They let the race play out naturally, and I thought the battle for the Stage 2 win was extremely exciting. I thought Chase Elliott chasing down Michael McDowell was fun. I thought there were moments peppered throughout the race that we'll remember. And so for me, this is a race I could go back and rewatch on TV because it meant something. Every lap meant something. And I would like to see that be the strategy for NASCAR racing going forward, in my opinion. I think that's what they should be doing. So, frankly, let's get rid of the stage cautions on the ovals, too. And, I hope when they come back here for the Brickyard 400, even if it's the only race they do it, let's have some strategy. Let's do it. Let's do it that way. So, speaking of the reason why we're talking in such strong terms with Brickyard and Oval, there's a tire test scheduled for tomorrow, but I think it's going to thunderstorm tomorrow. So Tuesday likely is when we're going to see NASCAR Cup Series cars. I believe there's 3 of them going to test on Tuesday, 1 from each manufacturer. It's not a full fields test. It truly is a tire test. So we're not going to get too much of an idea of what's going on, though there's some talk about maybe they're going to test without the splitter, which could be interesting. I'll certainly be on the turn 2 mounds. They've told me that they're not allowing media in for it, so I'll be on the mounds and hang out in the museum lot and see what I can see at some point during the day, either on Monday or Tuesday. So definitely NASCAR going back to the oval next year, and we're going to have to see how that all goes, whether or not this is the end of the chapter for the road course in NASCAR or whether it's just the beginning. Who knows? The announcements, I'm sure, are coming. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.